ADHD. Do you have a student that's been diagnosed with ADHD? Do you have a student, a child who you think needs to be evaluated for ADHD? A little nervous about it? There's not a lot of good press about ADHD, its causes, its solutions. A lot of information out there presents it as a dead-end disorder that you just have to learn to live with it. There's no hope in dealing with it. There's not much success for people with ADHD. So I want to share with you today some hope. Hope lies in the understanding that the ADHD brain is a gift and not an impairment. How can you say that? I say that because we know that the ADHD brain, people that have been diagnosed with ADHD, are your visionaries, your entrepreneurs, your highly creative people. The ADHD brain is one that thinks outside of the box, does not think in a linear process, but in a very contextual process. ADHD is known for three specific attributes, and these are impulsivity, distractibility, and hyperactivity. And you say, well, these don't sound like attributes. Well, let me share with you Tom Hartman's theory regarding ADHD. Tom Hartman is a man that's alive today. His son was diagnosed with ADHD, so he began to research it and see what it was. He studied it from an anthropological, sociological viewpoint. And this is what he concluded. Every culture needs hunters and farmers to perpetuate itself. His conclusion is that the ADHD brain is the brain of hunters, and that the American school system is a system for farmers. Well, we know we're not going to change the American school system. And he knew that he could not change the brain of his hunter ADHD student. What he had to say to his son was, son, the American school system is for farmers, and you're a hunter. So it's going to be our challenge, your mom's and my challenge, to help you maneuver this system successfully. And you say, well, how do we do that? Well, the first thing you do is to understand what ADHD is. It exists in the frontal lobes of the brain. This is the area of the brain that controls executive functions. What are the executive functions? The executive functions are the ability to focus, to move from one activity to another, and not to get hyper-focused. We know that an executive function understands the relationship between cause and effect. Other executive functions are impulse control, inhibition. We know that other executive functions help us organize our life, organize our materials, organize tasks, and time management. This is why the ADHD student, whether in elementary school, middle school, high school, or college, has a hard time finishing tasks, finishing homework, paying attention to the teacher. ADHD kids are often highly distractible, and this is what it looks like in the math classroom. The student is listening to his math teacher talk about the Greek letter pi, which is the number 3.14 and many numbers after that. And as soon as the math teacher says pi, our ADHD student is thinking, apple pie. I didn't get my piece of pie last night. I wonder if my sister ate my piece of pie. And when that is resolved, then our student's mind checks back into the math classroom, but maybe missed 20 seconds of teaching. It's like plugging a plug into a socket, pulling it out, putting it back in, pulling it out, and putting it back in. Lack of organization. This is why our students with ADHD do their homework, but maybe that math paper just was one sheet of paper. They fold it in half, stick it in a math textbook that maybe is 400 pages long, and they get to class the next day. Maybe they don't even hear the teacher ask for it. Or if they do, they panic. They can't remember where they put it because they've got no good, sound organizational system. They remember they put it in their math book, but they begin to flip through it and they can't find it. Remember, it was just one sheet of paper folded in half. So this is what ADHD looks like. How did my child get ADHD? ADHD has a genetic component. It can also come about with head injuries. There are a lot of people that have ADHD that have these issues with the executive functioning of their brain, but they are not so strong or severe that they disorder their lives. It is only when this begins to disorder our lives that we call it a disorder, and we need help, and we need to help our children. And I want to encourage you parents that helping your child rests with you. You are the one that is going to help your child make it through school. How do you do this? I've heard that ADHD is bad parenting, bad diet. And while I'm not making a case for poor parenting skills and poor diets, we know that ADHD cause does not come about because of poor parenting skills or poor diets. How do you help your child with ADHD? There are a lot of things out there available to you. I'm for treating the whole person. What does this involve? You have medication that you can look at, and you may be against medication, but I suggest that you look into it, study it, and see whether you have peace about giving it to your student. Only the parent can decide. A healthy diet, it certainly helps all of us function at a higher level when what we're eating is healthy. What else can you do? Exercise. Especially if your ADHD student is hyperactive. All of us need exercise to be healthy. There are supplements out there that you can take. In the classroom, how do I help my student in the classroom? You can meet with your students' counselors, teachers, and there are accommodations and modifications for the ADHD student. These consist of extended time on testing, priority seating in the classroom. I think one of the things that I am most excited about is that there is cognitive training software available today that's really only been available in the last 10, 12, 15 years. I use a software that I'm very pleased with, and it is called Brain Train. It was programmed by a Dr. Joseph Sanford. He is a clinical psychologist. He is a scientist. He is an educator. He has a private practice. He works with children with ADHD all the time. With all of the technology that we have today and the understanding that we are coming into with how the brain works, we have learned that the brain is what we call neuroplastic. What does that mean? That means that the brain can be changed, improved, the brain can be impacted. We can go to the brain gym just like we can go to the gym to strengthen our muscles. We have this cognitive training software today that can strengthen these weak areas in our students' brains and make them stronger. It may never make them an area of strength, but anything that we can do to increase the capacity to organize, to focus, to shift attention, to manage time, anything prepares our students for success. I would encourage you to call me and come for a free consultation on the use of Brain Train. I want to remind you that hope lies in understanding that the ADHD brain is a gift and not an impairment.